Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Vivian Neal. I work in the Digimap for Schools team. Welcome to this session. Thanks very much for coming along. Darren Bailey from the OS training team is here to give us this session. So Darren's always got lots of great ideas and is really enthusiastic, so I'm looking forward to this.
Thanks very much, Viv. Good afternoon, ladies and gents. So in the session today, we're going to quickly run through some of the getting started activities for Digimap for Schools. So if you're new to the service and you're looking to see some of the fantastic things you can do, we're going to run through the getting started activities. Now, if you guys want to do this, you feel free to follow me as well if you want to use your software while you're doing this. If not, you can just sit back and watch. We are videoing this or recording it, sorry, so you can come back and look at this at another time. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. And Viv, as you're still on the line, can you see Digimap for Schools on the screen? Just make sure we got that bit working.
I can, yeah, it's looking good.
Awesome, okay. So guys, this is the Digimap for Schools interface. And as I said, we're going to run through the getting started activities, which Viv would have sent a link to you in the email that you received. So we're just going to go across some of the basics that we have in the service. And as Viv said, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat, guys. So when you come into the service, the first thing you see is an outline map of the UK. So some of the basics for you guys that haven't used the service, we have a slippy map. We can click on the map and move the map around very simple and very easily. And we can view the different scales by clicking on the plus and minus on the right hand side here, and we can also double click anywhere and it will automatically zoom you to the next scale. If you're using it on an iPad or on a tablet, you can pinch on the screen and you can zoom in on your map. If you have a roller with a mouse on, you can also zoom in using the roller on your mouse. So we're going to work our way through the activity. So this is going to be rapidish. Any questions, please shout. So the first thing we're going to look at is a location. So if you guys are following with me, pop into the search at the top here, the postcode of your school. So I'm going to come into the OS site here and I'm going to zoom in. And using the map selector, I'm going to change this to the aerial view. So when I drag my dot across, I'll see the aerial view of the OS HQ. So if you're doing this, guys, do this around your school. And what we're going to work out is we're going to see if we can work out the area of that location that you have on your screen. So over on the left-hand panel, we have lots and lots of little tools here, and I'm going to come across the one that says measurement tool. And we're going to measure by area. So I'm going to click on around the area of the OS site. So I'm going to click in the left-hand corner here. This is going to be very rough. So I'm going to go around the points, clicking on the points in the locality around the OS. And again, you guys, if you're doing this, you can be accurate or inaccurate. The choice is yours. And then I'm simply going to double click. So the first thing we can do is area measurements. So we can look at things like how big's our school footprint, who's got the biggest garden in our classroom, how big's the shop that we go and shop in. So a nice little area and linking in aerial imagery as well. So we can look at key stage 1 using aerial imagery to look at place and location. So that's how we're going to do an area. So the next one we're going to look at is using latitude and longitude to find a place or a point and a location. So for this one, guys, if you follow with me, we're going to type in Paris into the search engine. So we're going to go to Paris, obviously in France. And we're going to find that under the places for the world. And I'm just going to come over to this part of the mapping and zoom in because I know it's going to bring me in over Notre Dame Cathedral. So we want to record the point or location using latitude and longitude for Notre Dame Cathedral. So over on my left-hand side again, using our tools here, I'm going to come up to drawing tools. I'm going to come over to draw and create, and the second tool down on the second row that says grid reference. So when we're in the UK, we'll get a grid reference. But when we're in the world, using one of these markers, and I click on that point, it will give me the lat and long for that locality. So it's a really nice one to be able to add to your map, is looking at lat and long if you want to include that on your map. But we'll look at the grid reference one as well for the UK shortly. Okay, guys. So again, if you're following with me, I'm going to base all of my stuff around the Ordnance Survey site. So I'm going to jump back to OSHQ. And what we're going to look at this time, we're going to use one of our drawing tools to draw a route on a map. So we're looking at our journey to school. So if you guys are going to do this, find your home, zoom your map out until you find your house on the map and your place, your school, your place of work. I'm just going to zoom my map out. So I live over here in Totton, just to the west of the Ordnance Survey building. And on our drawing tools, we're going to use our line drawing tool. So we can come across this one at the top, third one in, under Draw and Create, on the first row, we see line drawing tool. So I'm going to click on my line drawing tool. You can choose your color, style, and thickness of your line. So I'm going to choose a nice garish pink color, and I'll make it fairly thick so we can see it on the screen. And I'm going to plot as I can my journey from home to work. So I live in this building here, so I'm going to left click on the mouse and release the click. And now when I move my mouse around, you can see the line come out from where I've activated this tool. If you're doing this on a tablet or an iPad, you can just poke on the screen. For us guys using a mouse, every time we now left click, we can change direction. So I can follow the road network on my journey to work. So I come around this bit, up over here, up to the motorway junction. I'm going to sneak across the corner there, follow the junction down to the M271, leave the M271 like so. Now, if you want to move the map around, guys, while you've got this active, it's easier to use the cursor keys on your keyboard. You can click and hold and drag the map, but sometimes you may click accidentally and add a point. So just be aware if you're using that method, you may add a point. I find it's a little bit easier to use the cursor keys on your keyboard. So I'm going to click in, follow the road. I park my car on this point, and I'm just going to double click. And as you can see, guys, on my map, in my lovely garish pink color, I've drawn my route into work. So this is a nice one for your pupils to do, looking at their routes to school. So can your pupils plot their route to school? Do they have the spatial skills to understand the point and location around their local geography? Can they work out where they travel? Can they follow the road network or the path network? A really nice addition to this tool, guys. We can come up to Draw and Create again here on the left. The fifth tool in is a measurement tool, which was previously grayed out, but it's now gone green. So we can activate it by clicking on it. Now we can choose on our measurement, we can choose either metric or imperial. So I'm going to do both. So I'm going to click on metric. If you click on any point on your line, it will give me the metric. And if I come back to measure again, this time I'm going to click imperial. So when I click on the point again, I can have both measurements. So we can look at those routes to school and how far we travel. And when you're linking in scale, distance, and measurement, you've also got a little bit of maths in there because there's a calculation to be made. So we can do all those nice things around routes to school, where do I travel, and how far is it from point to point, using a very simple drawing tool. Okay, guys, let's look at something around some terminology used in the Key Stage 2 curriculum. So I'm going to zoom my map out to the extent of the world. So underneath the plus and minus bar here on the right-hand side, there's a little button underneath. If I click on it, it will zoom the map out to the extent. What I'm going to do is, just so I can delete my measurement and stuff off, I'm going to refresh my map using the refresh button. And this time I'm going to come back out to the extent of the world. So we've got a world view. So you've got a nice, what we call our Bartholomew's view of the world. So we've got a physical view, so we can see the Rockies and Andes and Himalayas. Now what we're actually going to do is we're going to change that using the map selector tool to an atlas view. So we can see the individual countries and their outlines on our map. So you can actually use this tool as an atlas with your pupils when you want to explore the world, looking at place and location. Now over in the overlays button, so the fourth one down on the left hand side here, guys, we have some really useful overlays. So one that we're going to add to our map, which is specifically mentioned in the Key Stage 2 curriculum, is we're looking at the major lines of latitude. So we can overlay on our map the Arctic Circle, the Antarctic Circle, the Tropics of Cancer, and equator. So we're going to look at the equator, and we're going to zoom in, and we're going to estimate how many countries we think the equator goes through. So we've got 1, 2, 3 as we scroll across our line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So maybe 11 to 12 countries that the equator runs through. So we can view this on our map. So I said those specific wording that's mentioned in the geography curriculum for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 is looking at the tropics and the equator. So with this nice overlay tool, we can overlay it on top of our world map. Okay, guys, I'm just going to turn that one off. And we're going to look at grid references. So we looked at the Latin long for finding a Latin long in Paris. So we're going to go and look at how we can record a grid reference using Digimap for schools. We've just got someone's popped a question in the chat. If you want to answer that one, Viv, that would be good. So I'm going to go off to Snowdon. So we're going to find ourselves up in the mountains in Snowdon. So we find ourselves over at the peak of Snowdon. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in, and we're going to see the visitor centre. Now, whatever scale of map you're using on this service, you can view the symbols that go with that map. So at Key Stage 2, introducing Ordnance Survey map symbols, we can view those on our map. So we can come to Tourism and Leisure, so we can find that symbol. So Visitor Centre should be on it somewhere. So we've got Viewpoint. Let's just come out one. And then we can see tourist information. So we can see the visitor centre at that scale of map, okay? So we can see that nice and easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to record the grid reference for the visitor centre here. So that V, as we can see on our symbol sheet, is the visitor centre. So we actually have three different ways that we can record the grid reference. So as I work for Ordnance Survey, we're going to do this what we call the proper way first, okay? So on our overlays on the left-hand panel, we're going to turn on the British National Grid. So this is where we get these points and coordinates from when we're doing our grid reference skills. So I'm going to zoom in on my map, and I'm just going to wait for the grid reference to change so I can see the 6 figures for it. This may take a few seconds, guys. So it got one too far. So let's just zoom that back out. Here we go. So we've got my 6-figure grid overlaid on top of my map. So doing our grid reference skills, we can go along the corridor and up the stairs to find our points on a map. So the visitor centre is in 610, 54, or 54 in those grid squares. Now, if we want to do a 6-figure grid reference, you can see we can highlight that as well. And more importantly, guys, we can see SH. Now, when you do grid references in this country, you need to know which 100-kilometre grid square you're in. And with this overlay on top, we can see that we are in the grid square SH. So whenever in this location, we need to prefix that 4 or 6-figure grid references with that particular 2-letter prefix. Now, there is another way we can do this. So I'm going to turn off the British National Grid. We can come down to the little information button here and click the little button that says capture coordinate. So this time when I click on the visitor centre, I can get all that detailed info. So I've got the grid reference. I've also recorded the lat and long for this locality, and also get the information about when the map data was published. So let's turn that one off. So we can get it that way. We can do it the proper way, going along the corridor and up the stairs. Or we can come back to our drawing tools. Now the grid reference tool that we used, if you follow guys, was when we put on Paris for our lat and long. This time when we use the grid reference within the UK, we will get the grid reference for that location. So you will see here at this scale, we will get a 6-figure grid reference. So it's a nice way to be able to find those grid references. So we can say what is the grid reference for a location or a point, and you can just click on the map to find that. Okay, so nice and easy. Now the only thing to be wary of with this tool, guys, the more accurate the grid reference, the more accurate the map, the more accurate the grid reference. So if you're zoomed into a large scale map, you will see a 10-figure grid reference. So find the appropriate scale for 4 and 6 figures. So a couple of ways there to do grid references, guys, which is quite nice. So I'm just going to delete my grid reference marker off. So I can come over to delete here, delete by click, and remove that off my map. So we're going to zoom out to the extent of the world again. So we're going to show the world in its locality. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at how many time zones are there in Russia. So again, time zones are specifically mentioned in the Key Stage 2 curriculum. Coming to my overlays on the left-hand panel, I'm going to click on that one. And this time I'm going to click on World Time Zones. And this will overlay on top of my map the time zones for the world. So I said, mention the Key Stage 2 curriculum. You can link in some nice maps in there as well. Okay, so you've got a nice way to be able to do that, linking different times in different places, looking at the distances between 2 points as well on our map. So on my time zone, all I'm going to do is using the drop down link here, I'm going to go to the transparency layer and fade it back so I can see Russia named and the extent of the different time zones. So we can count those. So we see we've got a +3, +4, +5, +7, +8. So we can see that it goes from +3 all the way to +12. So if you're looking at somewhere vast like Russia, you can see the different time zones as we move across the country. So you can do nice little time zone quizzes. So finding out, if it's midday in London, what time is it in Sydney? So we can see there's a 10-hour time difference. So you can do nice little find places and locations and using the time zones to look at those points as well. So linking in your time zones with this particular tool. So guys, what we're going to look at next is we're going to use some of the historical mapping we have in the service. Now there are 2 historical layers in here. So we can use some nice comparison, looking at things like change over time in a location. So we're going to use a classic piece of change over time, guys. I'm going to go and find Milton Keynes on my map. Zoom on Milton Keynes. So what I'm going to do is in the map selector box is I'm going to grab my little green dot at the top here and drag it all the way to the left. So what it will actually do is it will fade in the map from the 1890s. So we can see what a particular place looked like in Great Britain in the 1890s. And as I grab my little dot at the top here, we can fade the 2 maps together. So we can see Milton Keynes, all its wonderful roundabouts as we fade the current map in and compare it to the historical map. Now we could also look in the 1950s and look at those changes across those 2 periods, but let's focus on the 1890s. So what we're going to do with this map to see what difference Milton Keynes makes in this location, we're going to zoom our map out until we can see the grey extent here that we're going to use to look at that kind of change in a location. So using a drawing tool up here on the left-hand panel, we're going to come to the tool which is the shape drawing tool. And we're actually going to draw a polygon on our map. Okay, so we're going to highlight this specific area around Milton Keynes. So we can choose the color we want our line to be. So I'm going to go with the garish pink again, so we can see this nice on the screen. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to click around the gray areas. I'm going to click and release the click. And as I start to move around this gray location, we will see it will start to fill that area with color. So I'm going to do this fairly roughly on the screen, going around the little gray location, trying to show you the extent of Milton Keynes. Let's come down here. And we're going to come up here. And then we'll finally just double click here. So very roughly, we've done an outline of Milton Keynes on a current map. So what we're going to do next is now we're going to fade in our historical map so we can see the extent of how Milton Keynes has developed over that particular time. So looking at this particular area for a location. So this is a really nice one to do with your pupils because you can look at your own locality and look at those things like change over time and comparing it across those historical periods, how your place has changed from the 1890s and 1950s to today. And seeing how those new towns, and Milton Keynes being one of them, looking at how it's changed in that locality. We'll fade back in the current map. So a nice way of better linking your historical mapping. So what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to look at using something called a buffer tool. Now, a buffer tool, if any of you guys have used any kind of GIS software, will help us draw predetermined areas on a map using a very simple tool. So we're going to go into Perth in Scotland to look at this. So we're going to come up to Perth. I'm going to go to Perth and Kinross. And we will see the extent of Perth here, guys. And we will also see the River Tay as it runs through the centre of Perth. So we're going to use a buffer tool, as I said, to look at what we think might happen if there was a big flood or impact of a flood of a locality. So over on my tools on the left-hand panel here, we're going to come to our drawing tools again. This time I'm going to click on the 3rd tool along on the 2nd row, which is our buffer tool. And we're going to draw a line with a buffer. So that's what we're going to use, because we're going to draw a line and draw a buffer around it. And our buffer is going to be 0.5 kilometre. So we're going to say to the software, can you draw me this line 0.5 kilometre either side of the centre point? So what we're going to do, using this tool, guys, I'm just going to click along the river as it comes down through Perth. Again, I'm going to do this not super accurately, but you guys will do it really accurately. And I'm going to follow the River Tay until it comes out to about here. And then I'm going to double click. So we can say, with a rough idea, what would happen if there was 500 meters of flood in this location? How would that impact on Perth and its locality? So would all these places be flood in the location? Now, this only gives you a rough idea. Okay, the software does not have the complication to take into account height and contour levels, but it gives us a nice visual of what we think may happen in this location. So another way you can use this is look at things like environmental noise. So how far, if that train runs past our school and we think the sound travels for half a mile, what does that look like on a map? How many people would be hearing that noise? So a nice way to better link in this buffer stuff when we're using a map. Now, the final thing or a couple of things we've got left to look at. The next one we're going to look at is image search. So you can do this for anywhere in the country, guys. So again, I'm going to come back to the OSHQ, find myself on top of the Ordnance Survey building. There's two ways to use images within this service. Now, images, I feel, are one of the most important tools we can link to a map for understanding both maps and place and location. So the first one we're going to look at is using a kind of crowdsourced website to show this. So down on the panel on the left, we're going to come down to the 7th tool down where it says image search, and I'm going to click on that one. And I get this option to search geograph images. I'm just going to pop an asterisk in there, so Shift and 8 on my keyboard. Now, geograph is a crowdsourced image library whereby 3 guys wanted to create an image library based on Ordnance Survey grid square. And if you were the first one to put an image up for that grid square, you owned it. Now, we started sponsoring them about 15 years ago when they had 100,000 images. Now they've got almost 7 million images of the UK. And you can explore those on using Digimap for Schools. The little asterisk here just says, can you show me all the images on this piece of mapping on the screen? So I'm going to zoom in, because when I get one of these color dots, this tells me how many images are at my place or location. And this is going to go really slowly. Okay, so we're going to zoom in, and those will start to break up until we see these individual little cameras. So I'm going to click on one of those cameras, and it will show me a thumbnail of the image that has been collected at this point. So I can click on the image, and then I get to see the image in its full view. And for a lot of the images, you'll also get some metadata, give you an explanation of what's on there. So we can see this is the Ordnance Survey HQ. We've got a couple of cars, who it was taken by, and when. So we can use this little bit of metadata to look at this place and location. And I said there's almost 7 million images of the UK, and you can view them all on your map. So it's a great way to look at places in your own locality, or if you're doing some nice geography about comparing an urban and a rural place, you can view them on the map and also view them on the images to give your pupils that perception of place. Okay, so how we can add our own images. So I can come up to the drawing tools here, and there's a little tool that says image. So you can actually collect your own images and place them on your map. You can click on that tool, choose one of your little image markers, click on the screen. I'm going to hit browse, because hopefully I'm going to link a picture of the Ordnance Survey HQ to the map. Nikki's just put, are there any images for other locations? There's not, Nikki. Okay, geograph just covers, as Viv has just put, the UK and Northern Ireland. So I'm going to find my image of the OS building on my laptop on my computer. A few seconds later, it's going to give me an option to upload, and it will link my picture to the map. So you guys can be collecting images with your pupils and linking them to the places and locations in and around your school. So a really nice way to be able to link mapping together is to collect images of key places, key buildings, and places your pupils like in their locality. So we can very quickly and easily do that. Now, the final thing we're going to do, guys, is we're going to add some information. So we're going to do a little bit of field work, and we're going to link it into a locality looking at things like sound levels. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, hopefully on the screen. I've got to stop sharing and then reshare with you in a second. Okay, if I can get this to work properly, is to share this spreadsheet with you. So the spreadsheet here, we can collect our own data. So what I've done with using a couple of tools, which I will pop in the chat box, is using two iPhone tools. One is called GridPoint GB. In the chat, okay, and the other one is called Decibel X. So these are two data collection apps that you can use with your pupils, and they can be used on an iPhone or an Android phone. And what we're going to do is we're going to collect, using grid point GB, the grid reference of the point where we stood. And my label is going to be the sound levels at a particular location. So in my spreadsheet, I'm just going to create a little, what they call a CSV file with a heading, a grid reference and label. I'm going to record the grid reference and the decibel levels at those particular points. So let's see if we can now share the screen and get Digimap Schools back. So I'm going to go back. So what we're going to do is we're going to import that spreadsheet. Okay. Now I'm going to cheat slightly. We're going to go to add your own data, and you would browse and find that file so that we can link that file to our map. But I've done this before, so we're going to see if we can find our sound levels map and show you what that looks like when we geo-reference our points. So this is those points on that spreadsheet. So we've recorded, as we said, the grid reference of those locations where we stopped and the sound levels for those particular points. We've put them into that CSV, that spreadsheet, and we can import it using the add your own data tool. And what the software will do is it will automatically geo-reference those points on a map so we can see where they are. So a nice one to do is decibel level. So you could do this as a class exercise. Everyone goes home, records the sound level for their house. So you can say, who's got the noisiest house in our location? Or you could use the school grounds to do this, or it could be things around temperature, it could be wind speeds, etc. Anywhere you can record those things and geo-reference them on your map. So a nice way to be able to link that kind of stuff into your map. And the final thing, guys, just to look at saving and printing. So you get the option to save. So on the left-hand panel here, there's a little filing cabinet, and we can save maps and save them into your username and password. If you hit your unlock, and the 4-number pin you get with your sign up means you can then create folders and subfolders like I've got here, much like a Windows kind of way to do it, and get your pupils to save in there. And there is also a print button at the top. So I can hit the print button and I can print whatever I've got on the screen. So it can be the current map, historical map, etc., etc. And what it will do is it will produce a PDF or JPEG, and we can save that onto the hard drive of our machine or onto your network at school and come back and use those maps multiple times. So guys, this was a very, very brief introduction about introducing Digimap for schools. So I walked you through the link that Viv would have sent you about the getting started activities, so you can find those and work your way through those. There's lots of ways you can link this in to your geography at Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. I'm just going to go out to the login page where we originally come in, guys. If you're looking for ideas, you can come to the Help and Resource Centre here, click on the Learning Resources, and there's a whole host here of primary ideas linked to the Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 curriculum on some ideas how to link this into your geography curriculum for your school. So have a look through these, guys. There's some fantastic ideas of using Digimap for schools. So I'm going to stop there, guys. Okay. We're going to open this up to questions. So if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to shout them out or pop them in the chat. We will be running more webinars over the next couple of months, so keep your eye out on those webinars. You can also go to our Twitter link, to the Digimap Schools Twitter link, and find out some ideas on how pupils are using it there, or teachers are using it there with their pupils. So guys, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. Feel free to ask anything. We're more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Darren. That was excellent. Lots of good ideas there. I was just going to point out that next week, our communications team will let you guys know that there's some new features coming into Digimap for Schools. In the overlays panel, which Darren used to add in the British National Grid and the time zones overlays, there's going to be some really nice overlays coming in there soon. Things like volcanoes, tectonic plates, global climate information, and so on. And I will send the recording out probably on Monday next week to everyone who's registered for the webinar.
I'm looking forward to seeing the volcanoes, Viv.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. We're really pleased. And we do have a nice suite of learning resources on global locational knowledge. One of our contacts at the Geographical Association wrote those last year. So I'll send those out as well, because I think some of those resources could work really nicely with the new overlays.
I'll also say, guys, we do offer school training sessions. So if you're interested in having a training session for all your school members, if you're a primary school, we do offer training sessions. My email address is there in the chat. If anybody's interested, please drop me a line and we can talk about how we can, how you guys can host a session for all your teachers if you're at primary level.
That's brilliant, Darren. A really nice offer. So I don't see any questions coming in, so I think we can just end the session now. If people do think of anything later, feel free to send me an email. You'll have my email address and you've got Darren's as well, and we can follow those up. But you will receive the transcript and recording on Monday of next week. And thanks very much for coming along.